morning. Today we are continuing with those algebraic expressions and equations. Today we are doing CO41. I can evaluate expressions with fractions using addition and subtraction. So it's going to be building off of what we did last week with the adding and subtracting, doing your opposite operation, but this time instead of whole numbers, we have to remember how to add and subtract fractions. So it's not anything scary and new. It's just reminding ourselves how to work with those fractions. So hopefully you're becoming comfortable with those variables, as it won't be too long until you are using them very frequently in math. It's just, we're getting into it now, but it will be a lot of variables every year from now on out. This objective practices plugging in valuables for variables that are fractions, so remember your rules for adding and subtracting fractions and using variables in an expression. So what is a big rule for adding and subtracting fractions? Amelia?
The denominator stays the same.
Denominator stays the same. So you might want to write that down. Denominator stays the same. So it needs to be the same denominator for both fractions. So if they already are the same denominator, all you have to do is add or subtract the numerator. If they are different denominators, you need to make them the same. So you need to find the common denominator. And when you do that, remember, whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So if you have to multiply by 2 to make that denominator the same as the other denominator, you have to multiply the numerator by 2, and then you add or subtract your numerators. Gigi? You will have to simplify. So that comes at the end. So when we work with our fractions, you need to simplify your answer. Okay? So adding and subtracting fractions, you want a common denominator. Remember, the denominator stays the same. You do not add or subtract your denominators. Once you have that common denominator, it stays the same. Please stop talking. You only add or subtract your numerator. Then at the end, we always look if we can simplify. Now we need to remember what it means to work with the variables in an expression. You need to do your opposite operation. If you were adding, then you subtract. Well, actually, we're doing expressions now, not our equations. So now we're just straight up plugging in our fraction in for our variable, and we're adding or subtracting it. So let's see what that looks like. Let me scroll up. Our first one is 3/4 minus a. So what everybody needs to do is they need to rewrite their expression with the correct variable filled in. So a equals 1/4. I'm going to put 1/4 in for a, and I'm going to solve it. So if I have 3/4 minus 1/4, do I have to find a common denominator? No, they already have the same denominator. They both have 4 as their denominator. So I know my answer is going to have a 4 as the denominator. Then I'm going to subtract my numerators. Aiden?
2/4.
Yeah, 3 minus 1 is 2. So my answer is 2/4. Am I done?
No.
Why not? Isabel? I have to simplify. I can go even smaller. What can I divide out of 2 that I can also divide out of 4, Nora? I can divide a 2 out. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. I can't go any simpler than that. So my answer is 1/2. On the test, am I going to accept 2/4 as my answer? No. When the directions say simplify, your answer must be simplified. Okay? Let's look down at this one, A plus B plus C. Whew, that kind of sounds a little confusing at first. Let's just work this through. What am I going to put for A? 1/4 plus, what do I put for B?
3/8.
Plus, what do I put for C?
7/10.
Huh. I know my first step when working with adding and subtracting fractions is to find a common denominator. What is a common denominator for 4, 8, and 10? Olivia, you're looking at factors. They all share a factor of 2, but we want multiples when we look at a common denominator. So what's the least common multiple for 4, 8, and 10? What can they all multiply up into, James? 40. So I want each of my fractions to have a 40 as its denominator. So if I have 1/4 and I want to turn that 4 into a 40, what do I need to multiply by? 10. So I'm going to multiply that by 10. 1 times 10 is 10. So 1/4 becomes 10/40ths. Because 4 times 10 gave me my 40. 1 times 10 is 10. So now let's look at 3/8. How do I get my 8 to be a 40? What do I multiply it by? Isabel? 5. 8 times 5 is 40. 3 times 5 is 15. And now my last one, 7/10. How do I get 10 to be 40? 8 times 4. 10 times 4 is 40. 7 times 4 is 28. Now what do I do? Amelia?
Add them all together.
I'm going to add all of my numerators. I know my denominator stays the same, and I'm going to add up my numerators. 10 plus 15 plus 28. 0 plus 5 is 5. 5 plus 8 is 13. I'm going to carry that 10 over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times gives me 53. Is 53/40 my final answer? What should I do, James?
We have to simplify it. So we do how many times does 40 go into 53?
Yeah, I need to make it proper. Mrs. Dawson doesn't want things improper. She doesn't want that numerator to be bigger than the denominator. There's no improper in her school. We need to be proper. So how many times can I take 40 out of 53? 1 time. If I take 140 out of 53, how many am I left with? Amelia? 13. So I get 1 and 13/40, because when I did 53 and I took a 40 out, I was left with 13. I can't take another 40 out of my 13. So I'm left with 13/40. Can I simplify 13/40 anymore? I can't. There's nothing I can divide out of 13 that I can also divide out of 40. So I'm left with an answer of 1 and 13/40. Does that make sense? So for all of these, you look at your variable, you look at what your variable is, and you plug in the correct fractions, and then you do the operation, add or subtract. So you're going to have to make sure it has common denominators. You're going to have to make sure to only add or subtract your numerator. Do not add and subtract the denominators because the denominator stays the same. Make sure, step 1, common denominator. Step 2, add or subtract. Step 3, simplify, simplify, simplify. Okay? Then let's look at our bottom of the page. Using the values for A, B, C, and or D that we had up above, Write and evaluate an expression with a solution between 1/2 and 1. So we want our answer. The solution is your answer. You're going to use the variables A, B, C, and or D to get an answer that will fall in between 1/2 and 1. James, you have an example
Well,
or a question?
can we use like, does it have to be like A plus B? Or can we use like a number like say 3/4? Can we do that?
You only have to use at least one variable. So you could, like at the very top, they had some that have a fraction
Yeah.
with a variable, you could do that.
So it just, it could be
But as
2.
long as your answer falls in between 1/2 and 1.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be 2 variables, it can be 1 and 2.
It doesn't have to, it doesn't say it has to be at least 2 variables. You need at least one variable. Same thing for down below, except this time it needs to equal between 1 and 2. Your answer should be between 1 and 2. You need to use at least one of the variables. You could use 2 variables, or you could use 1 variable. Any other questions on this assignment? Okay, please remember, math packets are due tomorrow. So when you get done with this assignment, work on your math packets. All right. For my friends listening at home, we hope you are well, and we hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.